Big wins for J.D. Vance and Nan Whaley, and Ohio prepares for a post-Roe future. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Anna Staver, State House reporter for the USA Today Ohio Network, Derek Clay, Democratic strategist, and Bob Clegg, Republican strategist. After at least $66 million in a last-minute endorsement from Donald Trump, Ohio Republicans have a candidate for U.S. Senate. J.D. Vance captured 32% of the GOP primary vote, fairly easily beating Josh Mandel and Matt Dolan, who finished second and third. Mike Gibbons and Jane Timken fell back a bit. The one-time never-Trumper was sure to thank his most important supporter.
Thanks to the president for everything, for endorsing me. And I got to say, a lot of the fake news media out there, and there are some good ones in the back there. There's some bad ones too, let's be honest. But they wanted to write a story that this campaign would be the death of Donald Trump's America First agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, it ain't the death of the America First agenda.
Bob Clegg, not sure if we're the good or fake news media. We'll let others decide that. But would J.D. Vance have won this nomination without Donald Trump's endorsement?
No, I don't think he would have. I think, and I've always thought this, if the president did not jump in, and he waited to fairly late on this. I always felt that if the president did not jump in, Josh Mandel would win this race, and only because Josh has been on the statewide ballot so many times. He has very good name ID, and also I think the core for Josh's support was a lot of those Trump voters. So if he hadn't jumped in, I really think Josh Mandel would have won this race.
You know, there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking, Anna, after a race is over and you look back at the tactics of the campaigns, tactics of Josh Mandel and Mike Gibbons and Jane Timken. And one theory is that they were too Trump. They were trying to be Trump rather than reflect Trump.
Yeah, it's always hard to say, but I think that one of the interesting things was that Trump ended up endorsing someone who had been critical of him. Like when you look at Jane Timken, she helped him win in 2016. She was the GOP party chair then. She had been an early endorser. Mike Gibbons, Josh Mandel, all these guys had been in his corner from the get-go. And Vance was the mea culpa, the I made a mistake, the you were right. And for me, I think that's really interesting to see that in an endorsement from this president who seems to have a pretty long memory for the things that people have said about him.
70% didn't vote for Donald Trump's endorsed candidate. Derek, is that a room for optimism or pessimism for Democrats?
Well, what we know about the president is that he's not a loyal person. So he may support you one week, but he may be against you the next week, right? And, you know, when you talk about America First, Tim Ryan has always been America First, and that's why he's the Democratic nominee right now.
I'm surprised Josh Mandel didn't do better. He was my pick unofficially because of his name ID. He's lost statewide before,
Sure.
but he's won statewide before. Why didn't he do better?
Well, he didn't do better because he didn't get Donald Trump's endorsement. I mean, I don't want to make it sound that simplistic, but it really was that simplistic, and you could see it in the polling. Going up until to the endorsement, he was in first place. And it wasn't until President Trump endorsed J.D. Vance that you saw that surge occur for J.D. Vance. And, I mean, it's really as simple as that.
Speaking of second-guessing and Monday morning quarterbacking, Matt Dolan surged late. Does he have any regrets that he didn't do something different early on? Does he wish we had a delayed primary, perhaps?
I don't know. I think he may have hit the limit on what he could accomplish. Like 8 in 10 voters chose the Trump candidate, which I think tells us a lot about where the Ohio GOP is. But I do think there is that 20 to maybe 25% who are the more Chamber of Commerce, fiscal conservative, traditional Republican candidates. And maybe that's the ceiling for a candidate like him. And I think what he was hoping for in this 7-way race is theoretically 25, 26% could have been enough to take it.
Yeah.
Like had J.D. Vance not not gotten that Trump endorsement, had it been more split evenly across some of those candidates, like, I think that was the lane he was going for.
Yeah, Jane Timken, you'd think would have done better than 6, but it just broke J.D. Vance's way with the former president's endorsement. On the Democratic side, it was not much of a contest. Congressman Tim Ryan easily beat his opponents Morgan Harper and Tracy Johnson. His message is unity and jobs.
I want us to be the builders again. I want us to be builders again. I want us to dominate the electric car industry. I want us to dominate the battery industry. I want us to dominate the electric truck industry. I want us to dominate the chip industry, glass industry, energy in Southeast Ohio, aerospace in Southwest Ohio. I want us to be the manufacturing powerhouse of the world. I want us to help this country leapfrog China, leapfrog these other countries and all these industries. We can do it by coming together,
Derek Clay, Republicans are labeling Tim Ryan a Trump Democrat. Are they wrong?
Listen, what I know about Tim Ryan is that he's the original America First candidate. When you talk about a candidate and a congressperson that's come from a Democratic region like the Mahoning Valley, that's the backbone of this state. Those are very hardworking people, and he knows what it takes to make sure that we have strong manufacturing in this state and labor unions that's going to represent workers. So I think that J.D. Vance is going to have a very tough time when he has to overcome the carpetbagger label himself coming into the state when you have a congressman that's been here for over 20 years doing it.
Bob Clegg, J.D. Vance grew up here, spent childhood here, but then went away to school, the military school, and then to California. Does Tim Ryan have a home state advantage? Can he use that against J.D. Vance? Will it be successful?
I mean, he can try to use it. The problem he has is that he supports Joe Biden, and he supports Joe Biden's policies. And he's doing that in a state that Donald Trump carried not once, but twice by over 8%. And with the economy in the shape that it is right now, with inflation raging, Tim Ryan's got to take responsibility. He voted for all of these things that has caused this to happen. He's got to take responsibility for his support of Joe Biden and how Biden has turned out as president.
We saw that J.D. Vance can raise money, a lot from one guy, but Peter Thiel, but that's going to be the key. Do national Democrats think Tim Ryan can win, and will they fund his campaign?
Well, Tim Ryan raised a fairly substantial amount of money in the primary. I think close to 10 million was it that he has in his war chest. So he's got a decent chunk of change going into this, which he's going to absolutely need. But I think it will be a question when we start to see polling whether national groups think he can be competitive. I mean, Sherrod Brown is the exception that defines the standard. So we'll have to see. If polling looks close, I think they'd put a lot of money. But if it looks 8 to 10 points like a Trump victory, maybe not.
Yeah. All right. Our next topic. The finalists for Ohio governor are set. Governor Mike DeWine survived divisions in the Republican Party to capture the nomination. DeWine fell short of half of the GOP vote, but easily beat Jim Renacci and Joe Blystone.
Look, it's been my experience, and I've done this a few times in elections, and I think generally people vote their future. I mean, who is going to be the person to lead this state for the next 4 years? And I think we have demonstrated that this is a fiscally sound administration. This is an administration that tries to make sure everybody has the opportunity to live up to their full potential. It's an administration that is concerned about the unborn, is concerned about the poor. We're concerned about making sure everybody has the chance to live.
A clear and big win for Mike DeWine, Bob Clegg,
yes.
But he lost 22 counties to Joe Blystone.
Yeah, I know.
A farmer from Canal Winchester who had never been on anyone's radar before.
Sure.
Is that a cause for concern?
Sure, and I think you saw that in the primary. The governor spent a lot of money on mailings, TV, radio. He knew he was in a tough race, and he proved it by spending a lot of money. But it worked out pretty much the way I think a lot of people in the party thought it would, in that if it would have been a head-to-head with he and Joe Blystone or he with Renacci, that would have, I think, been a lot more problematic. But since he had 3 opponents, well, that's going to split that anti-DeWine vote, and you saw that happen.
Yep.
But we figured it was going to be under 50%, but he wasn't too far under.
Joe Blystone voters, do they come out for Mike DeWine in the fall? Or they stay home? That's the big question, I guess, Anna.
Well, I certainly don't think they're going to go for Nan Whaley, and that's going to be the real challenge. If enough will stay home, I don't know. I assume some might, but then again, there'll be a U.S. Senate race on the ticket that could bring them out. They're going to be interested in that state Supreme Court race that we've got going. There'll be a number of issues. And, I think this Roe v. Wade decision, like the governor is always been very conservative. He's very pro-life. And I think, when he signs that trigger ban, that's going to help do a lot to mend fences with some of those more conservative voters.
Derek, when Democrats see the sitting governor getting 48%, clear plurality, he really wasn't much doubt that he was going to win this race. Do you just say, okay, that's the past, we're going to just race against him head on?
Well, what people don't understand is that, Nan Whaley has some rural roots. She knows how to talk to rural voters. And I think that that's going to be something that's very important going into this general election race with the governor. The governor has had some stumbling blocks. When you talk about the Dayton shooting, that that the administration practically has not done anything on. If anything, they've made the situation worse with this concealed carry permit that anyone can just conceal carry in the state. I think that there's going to be some real issues that the governor is going to have to explain himself on.
It always comes down to the economy, Derek, but in the Intel announcement this spring or late winter, that has to be a feather in his cap. I mean, Democrats really can't run against that.
No, the Intel deal was definitely a feather in the cap for the state of Ohio. But I think what the former mayor, Nan Whaley, is going to point out is that how much did that cost the taxpayers to get that deal here in the state?
All right, let's get to that Democratic race. It was hard to get a read on who had the edge heading into Tuesday's primary. In the end, though, the winner was pretty clear. Former Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley beat former Cincinnati Mayor John Cranley by a nearly 2-to-1 margin.
Ohio isn't a red state or a blue state. It's a frustrated state that has been ignored by politicians from both parties for far too long. I'm running for governor because I know that Ohio is ready for a change. The fact of the matter is that Mike DeWine is out of touch, corrupt, and doesn't care about you.
Derek Clay, I don't think anyone saw that 2-to-1 margin. Were you surprised by that, and what was the reason?
I was surprised by that. I thought that race would have been a lot closer than it was. I don't even think that Mayor Cranley won his home county in Hamilton County. Clearly Nan Whaley ran a better race. She was out on the trail. Everywhere that I was around the state, she was there. She had a clear message. She was on TV. She did the ads in the mailers. To the Democratic voters. So she just ran a better race than he did.
Bob, how concerned should Mike DeWine be about Nan Whaley? She's well known, not the same idea as Mike DeWine, but they've actually been friendly. They were together after the Dayton shooting, but they differed on how to react to that. How does Mike DeWine campaign against her?
Well, I think he's going to take her seriously, as you always should take your opponent seriously. When you don't, you get yourself in trouble. But, I mean, let's face it, Nan Whaley is your classic liberal. She's pro-abortion. She's anti-gun. In 2022 in Ohio, those candidates have a really hard time winning, especially when it looks like we're going to have a pretty good Republican environment going into the general election with turnout probably to our favor. And that's the one thing about the primary that's most interesting to me is the fact that you had a 2-to-1 turnout difference between Republicans and Democrats.
Well,
I've never seen that.
But Democrats didn't spend $65 million
no,
trying to get their vote
that
out.
was one race that did that. But
Yeah.
if it would have been, if they all had been unopposed, I would have said, you're right. Yeah. But, I mean, this is approaching numbers I see down south in like Alabama, Mississippi with the Republican-Democrat turnouts. I mean, I think it just shows you how red Ohio has become.
We've never had a female nominee from a major party for governor before, Anna. What difference does that make, do you think?
Well, I kind of wonder if maybe that propelled her to victory or the substantial victory on election night. We had that leaked Supreme Court decision, and that was one of the differences that she tried to draw with Cranley, is that she's been pro-abortion access her whole life, whereas Cranley kind of changed his mind as he got older. And I think that's something that she's going to try to emphasize, that there's really no path to a Democratic majority in the state House or the state Senate. And I think she's going to say, I'm the right person to act as sort of a stopgap against all of their quote unquote like bad ideas, that she's going to try to sell herself to suburban moms like me that this would be the appeal.
Can she raise the money?
She can raise the money. She's gonna be working, obviously her base of voters, but there's going to be a number of gun rights, gun advocates that want to see change in this state in regards to gun laws. She's going to get support from that. She's going to get support from the labor union. So I think that this is going to be a competitive race when it comes to money.
All right. Our next topic, Ohio. As Ohio voters, we're preparing to cast primary ballots. A bombshell dropped on the eve of primary day. Politico published that draft Supreme Court majority opinion that would overturn Roe versus Wade. If the draft, written in February, holds, Ohio very likely would ban most abortions. Anna Staver, activists were caught by, I think everyone was caught by surprise. Activists certainly caught by surprise. What happened at the State House in the days immediately following? Was there any action, anything going on down there?
Well, for starters, it blew up all of our election day plans. We all thought we knew where we were going, what we were covering, and then that all changed. But everyone was really surprised. You heard all the statewide candidates sort of came out and gave their opinions. And then the state Democrats, 4 women, 2 in the House, 2 in the Senate, introduced a plan to do a state constitutional amendment to protect abortion access. Now, you would need a 3/5 majority in both the state House and Senate, so that's certainly not going anywhere. But then there's some conversation about trying to run it as more of an amendment on the ballot, which could be really interesting because in polling, a majority of Ohioans consistently show support for some measure of abortion, not all, not up until 40 weeks, but there tends to be a majority support in that 12 to 15 week mark.
Bob Clegg, is this, for folks who oppose abortion rights,
yes,
this is what people have been working for a long time, folks like you. Yeah. What do you do now? I mean, is the fight over?
No, it just shifts the battleground from a national, federal battleground down to the state level, and you just keep the fight going. I don't know where all this surprise comes from because, I mean, we did have 6 more or less conservative justices on that court. I thought we knew at some point soon, I don't know what soon means, we would have something changing Roe. So I wasn't all that shocked by this.
Yeah, I think we were shocked by the timing. I think late June is when it usually
that's because of the leak, which is another whole story in itself.
Yeah, and if it in fact is the final ruling, which John Roberts says it is not, do Democrats, now for 50 years, Republicans have been galvanized to overturn Roe. Many of them, Derek, are one-issue voters. Democrats not so much in defending Roe. Does that change now? Do Democrats become more galvanized? Should it be overturned?
Well, I think you started to see that as soon as that leaked memo came out. I think you saw protests at the Supreme Court, and I think that you're going to see more of those types of protests as we get closer to whatever decision comes out from the Supreme Court. The momentum has definitely shifted, and I think it could affect how the statewide races are affected in November.
Nan Whaley has it, as Anna said, the polls in Ohio basically 55-45 support Roe in some form. Nationally, 70% support Roe. This is the minority, possibly, if you look at those polls, being in charge of this decision. Does that give Nan Whaley something to really run on? Is that enough?
The whole issue of abortion, I have a feeling, if you're asking me, how will it affect turnout? I got this belief that abortion is one of those issues that if you're really, really keyed up about it, and you care about it, and you're very energized about it, you're already voting. I think the issues that tend to influence turnout most are the everyday issues, meaning going to the grocery store, getting gas at the gas station, going to your doctor, getting health care. I think those are the kind of issues that affect you on a daily, weekly, monthly basis are much more impactful on turnout than something like abortion or climate change or things like that.
Suburban voters, Anna, I hate to be cliche, but they're watching. They're more moderate voters. Soccer moms tend to support abortion rights. So oftentimes would vote for Republicans in the past, now have shifted away from Donald Trump. Is this more reason to shift away and possibly towards Nan Whaley and Tim Ryan?
I think it also depends on what Ohio specifically passes. Right now it looks like maybe that heartbeat bill would become law of the land were this decision to be accurate and official. But the trigger ban that they're proposing has no exemptions for rape or incest. It also has an affirmative defense, which means that it's not allowed to save the life of the mother, but the doctor would still be arrested and prosecuted and could use that argument as his or her defense. And that's a pretty extreme version of a full ban. And I think it depends on how Democrats market that to, say, women who live next door to me.
Derek, does it hurt abortion rights supporters to predict that this decision will lead to other things, like the reversal of gay marriage, bans on contraception? Even today I heard it could lead to the reversal of the interracial marriage ruling, the Loving ruling. That seemed to be really extreme.
Well, I mean, it could possibly do that, right? And I think that that's what happens when you politicize the court system. And of course, Democrats are always trying to get justices that are leaning more to the left and Republicans more to the right. But when you politicize the court system, these types of decisions are always a consideration.
Should supporters of gay marriage, supporters of contraception be worried by this ruling, if it in fact is the ruling?
No, because this is about abortion. This isn't about anything else. What they're saying is, okay, you're going to take a conservative stance on abortion. Therefore, you all are going to take a conservative stance on every single issue that comes before the court.
But it comes down to that right to privacy. That's what Roe is based on.
No, but I mean, on any of those issues, you're going to take the most conservative. And I don't think it's that way, because I think if you look, and we don't know what's going to happen, but if it is, let's say, a 5-4 decision, those 5 that are on the one side, they're in different degrees. They're not all there lockstep. So whatever the issue could be, that one of those could flip very easily.
All right, let's get to our final topic, the topic that just won't go away. The Ohio Redistricting Commission is either thumbing its nose at the Ohio Supreme Court or hoping its Chief Justice changes her mind. The commission has reapproved its 3rd version of the state legislative district map. The Supreme Court rejected those maps in 3 other sets, but it looks like this version may hold, as a federal court has indicated it will accept these maps if the court or commission cannot come up with another one. And as David, the big question is, fair election folks were yelling at last night or Thursday night, contempt of court. What's the feeling at the State House of the Supreme Court holding this commission in contempt?
Well, I think it qualifies, but I don't know whether the court will go forward with it. Now, for folks who haven't been following this as closely as probably everyone at this table has, the state Supreme Court did hold the commission in contempt very briefly. They had scheduled a time to have them all come in and sort of explain why they shouldn't be fined or imprisoned or all of that kind of crazy stuff. But then they worked it out and they decided not to do that. Now, will the Chief Justice, Maureen O'Connor, decide to hold them in contempt again? I think she certainly has a reason, potentially. Like, they've just resubmitted a map that she said was unconstitutional. That sounds like contempt, but I don't know. I mean, the big question isn't so much contempt, but what's the punishment? Is it a fine? Are we going to put the governor of the state of Ohio in prison? Like, how does this work?
Derek, what do you think?
I don't think that it will get to that extreme. We hope that it doesn't get to that extreme.
Yeah.
But the Chief Justice sent a very clear message that we want fair maps. And that's the reason why it's been rejected 4 times. So basically what you're saying is we're going to give you our old stale map. This is a map that the Ohio Supreme Court has already said is not constitutional. And they're going to submit a old stale map to really thumb the nose at the Supreme Court. And if you got a federal court that's making decisions about state decisions, that sets a very, very bad precedent.
This is the game of chicken.
Sure.
And we're getting
It
close.
was always going to be that way from the beginning.
So how does it end with that federal judge say we'll take this third map?
Probably. But the problem is the chief and the other three Democrats on the Supreme Court, they keep moving the goalposts. They wanted a 54-45 map. They were given a 54. Well, we don't like the kind of districts that are in that 45 for the Democrats. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. This is stuff that is not in the Ohio Constitution. So the federal court saying that those lines are good, they're good.
Yeah, that's the argument the Republicans have is that there were more competitive districts, but all of the competitive districts, Democrats would argue, were on the Democratic side, not the Republican side. Anyway, final off-the-record parting shots. Bob Clegg, you're up first.
Well, everybody thinks we have a break here from political ads because everybody seems to be out of money after this primary. But I'm afraid that we're going to have some third-party entities coming into Ohio, and I think this summer we're going to see a lot more political ads.
Oh, goody. Derek Clay.
You know, I have to say that this is such a beautiful studio. This is the second brand new studio I've been in this week. And WOSU got it right this time.
Yes, and we got more. It's going to get even more beautiful as we get our set going in the next couple of weeks. Anna Staver, your final thought.
Actually, the craziest political story of this week for me was, I don't know if you guys noticed the county commissioner who proposed shooting feral cats because there was a problem with feral cat colonies. And he made the decision that he was like, we should have feral cat season. Well, he lost his primary election on election night, and I just love that his challenger replaced his Facebook profile page with a picture of him and his cat. It was like a little low-key shade on a small issue, and I don't know, it's that kind of like craziness in local politics that I really love.
Lesson there: do not mess with the cat owner vote, I guess. My off-the-record comment: you know, everyone was shocked by the leak from the U.S. Supreme Court today, and people clutching those pearls, saying it was outrageous and a tremendous breach of trust. I'm not so sure about that. Little transparency for that equal third branch of government isn't so bad. Cameras in that courtroom would be nice too. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online. We are on Facebook, and you can watch each episode at our website, wosu.org/COTR. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.